Hello, this is Olivia, and welcome to my channel, Justice in Her Hands, with a new original story. Let's begin. The door clicked, soft as a bite, and the house kept breathing without me. Pine sap and cinnamon drifted under the threshold, sweet as a lie. I pressed my ear to the old heat vent, and the metal prickled my cheek. Down the hall, in my living room, Aubrey's laugh skipped like ice cubes in a glass. "No one wants to deal with her old lady drama," she said, not even bothering to lower her voice. Someone snorted. Someone said, "Just get through tonight." Someone else, my son Evan, murmured something I could not catch, and that hurt more than the words I did hear. I tried the knob again. It didn't budge. They had used the little hallway key I keep in the blue dish for stuck doorknobs. They had planned this. A heat rose in my chest. Not anger yet, just the ache of recognition. I could picture them, sprawled on my couch, feet on my coffee table, talking about me like I was already gone. I could also picture the folder in my closet, property tax receipts, the deed, my late husband's letter telling me, in his tidy pen, that this house stays with me as long as I want it. Those papers were a life raft, and they were not going to touch them. I slid open the top dresser drawer and found my phone. Hands steady, breath shallow. I texted one person, Connie Ruiz, my neighbor, my friend, the kind of woman who shows up with soup before you know you need it. Locked in my room, I wrote, "Please don't call, just text." "Are you safe?" She replied at once. I could see her across the hedge in my mind, robe tied tight, hair in a messy bun, ready to move. I typed back, "For now. Can you meet me at daybreak by the side gate?" No headlights. She answered with one word I have learned to trust. "Yes." Voices floated up again. "Market is hot." A man said, "We list soon." I tasted metal. Laughter swelled, polite and cruel. My feet found the floorboard that always creaks, and I stood still until the wood remembered me. In the closet, I reached behind my winter coats and pulled down the shoebox where I keep what matters. Safe deposit box key, my will, the letter from my husband, and a small stack of documents that say, very plainly, that I am not helpless. Paper rasped under my fingers like dry leaves. If I confronted them now, they would call me unstable. If I stayed quiet, they would wrap the story around me like a shroud. So I did the one thing they would not expect from a woman they believed had nowhere to go. I prepared to leave. I packed with the calm that comes when a decision finally lands. Wool socks. The leather checkbook my mother gave me. A copy of the will, folded into an envelope I addressed in careful block letters. "For my children, read after breakfast." I left it on the vanity where the morning light would find it and sharpen every word. Then I sat on the edge of the bed and breathed in the faint scent of cedar and the distant music. An old carol turned thin. My fingers shook once, then stopped. I looked at the door, then at the window. I measured the distance. I pictured Connie's little hatchback idling with the lights off, the side gate latch that always sticks, the path of stepping stones I set myself when I believed family meant safe passage. I whispered into the room, just for me. "You wanted me to rest. I will, just not here. And when they read what I left behind, it will be far too late. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and comment where you're watching from." Cold air met my face when I cracked the window and eased the old sash up an inch at a time, palms stinging from the rough paint ridge. The yard lay in a shallow blue hush, frost sugaring the stepping stones I set years ago, each one a memory of a spring weekend when family still meant help, not leverage. I slipped the small backpack over my shoulders and tested the drop to the potting bench under the sill. My knees grumbled, but they held. The night smelled like pine pitch and chimney smoke, and my breath came out in little puffs that vanished as quickly as they formed. I paused, listening for a laugh or a footstep. Just the refrigerator hum and a distant carol drifting thin from the living room. I moved. At the side gate, the latch stuck, as always, a stubborn bite of metal. I slid the blade of my house key under the lip and lifted. The click was soft, but in the cold it felt loud enough to summon every bad thing. I kept going. Connie's hatchback idled with the lights off, a small, warm heartbeat in the dark. She opened the passenger door before I touched the handle. No questions. Just a thermos pressed into my hands and a blanket thrown across my lap while I sank into the seat, fingers too stiff to be brave. "We'll talk at my place," she said, voice low and steady. That steadiness settled me more than the heat vents. Her kitchen was warm and smelled like coffee and laundry soap. I laid my folder on the table, the paper edges whispering as if they knew they were finally where they belonged. Connie brought out a small home safe she uses for passports and tucked my safe deposit key and originals inside, while I kept copies in a clear sleeve. It felt like sliding weight off my chest and into steel. I wrote down the name and number of an attorney my late husband once trusted, Nolan Beck, on a sticky note and set it beside the phone. Banks and offices would be closed, but an email would reach him, and tomorrow would come. I typed, hands shaking only once. Urgent consultation regarding homestead protections, potential unlawful influence, and immediate lock changes. I attached scans. I hit send. A thin, clean relief. Connie wrapped my fingers around a mug and said, not unkindly, "They do this because they think no one will see." I stared at the swirl of steam and felt a part of me want to crumple, to crawl back into bed and pretend I had imagined everything. Another part stood up inside me and said, "Enough." That voice was quiet, but it didn't blink. "I left a note," I told her. "They'll find it after breakfast." I did not say what the note contained, only that it would make them sit up straight. The truth is, I wrote it in that flat bookkeeper hand that has balanced a lifetime of columns. Effective today, the property is not to be listed, shown, or encumbered by anyone but me. Any attempt will be treated as interference. For the avoidance of doubt, we are done pretending I am the problem. We planned like women who have lived long enough to know the value of a plan. First, an emergency locksmith to meet me back at the house when the sun was honest in the sky. A neighbor across the street, Mr. Delaney, a retired firefighter who sees everything from his porch, would be asked to keep an eye out and, if needed, step outside to be a witness. Second, phone alerts on my accounts. Passwords changed. Two-factor turned on. New recovery codes printed and sealed. Third, Nolan's reply and a same-week appointment. I would not vanish into a friend's spare room and seed the narrative. I would walk back through my own front door in daylight, not to fight, but to formalize what is already true. My house, my name, my peace. Just before dawn, fatigue slid through me like water finds a crack. Connie pointed me to her guest room for an hour and stood guard with her ridiculous aluminum baseball bat, the one she keeps behind the broom. I lay down without taking off my shoes and listened to the heater click, the ordinary music of a home that is safe. Sleep did not come, but something close did. A stillness I have not felt in years. When my phone buzzed, I sat up. Not my children. Nolan's auto-reply, the sort a careful man writes for holidays, with a line for emergencies. I took a breath and dialed. The ring sounded like a metronome in an empty room. On the third, someone answered, gravelly, awake enough. I said my name. I said the word locked. I said the word sail. The silence that followed was short and purposeful. "I understand," he said. "Do not confront. Document. I will meet you this afternoon." By the time the sky paled to a thin gray, the frost on the hedges looked like sifted sugar, and my breath felt crisp in my throat. Connie drove, steady hands at 10 and 2, her hatchback humming like it had decided to be brave with us. We pulled up 2 doors down, and she cut the engine. The street was quiet, just the soft chuff of a jogger's shoes and the faraway rattle of a delivery truck. Mr. Delaney was already on his porch in a quilted jacket, coffee steaming. He lifted 2 fingers in a small salute, seen, not loud. The locksmith, a stocky man with careful eyes named Travis Boone, arrived in a plain van and kept his voice low. "You're the homeowner?" he asked, glancing at the folder tucked under my arm. I nodded and passed him my driver's license, the deed copy, and a letter I had drafted last night authorizing immediate rekeying. He studied the paper like a man who has been blamed before. "All right," he said. "We'll be clean and quick." He photographed the front lock and my documents next to it, then time-stamped his work order. That simple procedural click settled something inside me. Process. Paper. Proof. We started at the bedroom. The air in the hallway still held a faint sweetness of last night's cinnamon candles, sharpened now by morning cold. My door wore the little brass privacy lock I have had for years, the kind you can open with a tiny key or a coin. Travis crouched, angled his phone, and took a photo of the keyhole and faint scratches around it. "This one only locks from the hallway side," he said. "Matter of fact, not accusatory, just a mechanic stating torque." The words landed like a weight on a scale. I took my own picture. Knob, casing, vent above it. The thin rectangle of winter light on the floor. So ordinary and so damning. On the vanity, the envelope sat exactly where I'd left it. Cream paper bright in the cold light. I photographed it in place with the clock on my phone in the frame, then slid it back so the first thing they touched would be the truth arranged in my bookkeeper hand. The room still smelled like cedar, like the past, and a little like the phantom of last night's fear. I took one more breath and felt it leave my chest without taking me with it. Back in the foyer, Travis swapped out the deadbolt with swift, practiced turns. Connie stood with her notebook open, writing down times and names and little details I might forget under pressure. The brand of the lock, the exact wording Travis used, the license plate on his van. Mr. Delaney folded himself into the doorway, just inside enough to count as present, just outside enough to avoid dramatics. "Look at that," he murmured. "Gaze on the street, thin ice on the birdbath." His presence said the rest. Neighbors see. Halfway through the second lock, a car crept by slowly and kept going. I felt my stomach pitch, the old reflex to explain, to soften, to apologize for making noise in my own house. I pressed my palm to the new cold metal of the bolt instead. "My house," I said, too quietly for anyone but Connie to hear. She nodded. "Your house." When the work was done, Travis handed me 2 sets of keys and a receipt with timestamps and a list of changed cylinders. He spoke like a professional giving instructions, not a man delivering rescue. "Keep this. If anyone says this was done without authority, this paper says otherwise." He paused. "If you expect trouble, I can add a high-security cylinder to the back door next week." The offer was practical, not theatrical. "Yes," I said. "Next week." In the kitchen, I took photos of the vent grill and the scuffed floor, where I know the late-night feet had scuffed it, then set my phone down and let my hands steady around the edge of the counter. The house sounded like itself. Heater breathing, a branch tapping the eave, the quiet that means safety. I reset my alarm system, changed the code, and texted Mr. Delaney a simple, "Thank you." He replied with a thumbs up and, underneath it, 3 words that made something tight in my chest loosen. I saw enough. I left the envelope where it was, turned on the coffee maker purely for the normal sound of it, and checked my watch. The morning had only begun, but a line had been drawn. If they came now, they would find a door that opened only with my consent and a note that did not ask, did not plead, did not apologize. It instructed. It warned. It ended. The call came mid-morning, a hard buzz against my palm that made the coffee tremble in its cup. Evan's name filled the screen, bright as a flare. I let it ring once, twice, then answered and listened to my son's voice arrive jagged with control. He said they had found my envelope. He said the word unreasonable like it was a diagnosis. I kept my own words slow and even, a metronome. We would discuss this after I met with counsel. From now on, I said, communication in writing. My voice surprised me, steady, almost calm. Beneath it, my pulse climbed the stairs in my throat. When he started to push, I repeated the instruction, then ended the call and placed the phone face down. The kitchen went quiet except for the thin whine of the kettle. Connie slid a pad toward me. "Write exactly what he said while you still hear it," she murmured. I did, fingers cramped, the old bookkeeper hand doing what it has always done, record. I scanned the locksmith receipt, the photos of the lock and the envelope's placement, and emailed the files to Nolan with a brief clipped recap. Cold winter light angled across the table, catching dust motes that looked like tiny, slow comets. A second email arrived, Nolan's assistant confirming the afternoon slot and attaching a checklist. Identification, any prior powers of attorney, and the deed copy. I felt a twinge thinking about power of attorney. How easily the wrong name on the wrong line can erase a life. I had never signed one, but the idea that someone assumed I had set my teeth on edge. I put the empty folder in my bag, just to feel its lightness. Nolan's office sat in a brick building that used to be a bank, with the old vault doors standing open like a mouth that had learned to keep secrets. The waiting room smelled faintly of paper and lemon oil. When Nolan stepped out, he wore a charcoal sweater and the expression of a man who lives in the space between ordinary and emergency. He shook my hand, then listened without interrupting while I told him everything in a single, careful current. The lock, the vent, the laughter, the envelope, the rekeying, the witness across the street. He took notes with a sharp pencil and the occasional nod, then turned the legal machine on in a way that felt like a lighthouse rotating toward me. First, he drafted and printed a representation letter to my children, directing all contact to him and warning that any attempted listing or access without my consent would be considered interference. He slid it to me to sign and watched as I wrote my name, the pen steady in my fingers. Second, he prepared a homestead declaration and a simple notice for the county recorder, my claim of possession and intent to occupy, so anyone searching the property would see my name in black and white. Third, he drafted a short, firm letter to local brokerages. No listing, no showings, no lockboxes, no exceptions. Connie read silently over my shoulder and let out a breath I did not realize she had been holding. He asked if I wanted to name a medical proxy and a durable power for finances as a protective measure against future concern trolling, as he called it. People declaring you unfit because it serves them. The phrase fit like a glove. I chose Connie as my backup for emergencies and signed revocations of any powers I might have inadvertently granted in the past. The notary's stamp thumped the desk, a small, solid heartbeat. My phone vibrated again, a text from a number I did not recognize. A realtor asking if the property would be available for a quiet, pre-market look. I showed Nolan. He smiled without warmth and dictated my reply. The owner does not authorize any showings. Any further inquiry should be directed to counsel. I typed it out and hit send, the tiniest thrill sparking in my chest. The before and after lived right there. The woman locked in her room last night, and the woman who could shut a door with a sentence today. We left with a folder thicker than the one I'd carried in. Outside, the wind had picked up, scraping leaves along the curb. Connie looped her arm through mine, and for a moment I felt the ache in my calves and the odd lightness in my head that comes after you finally stand up. When a car rolled past, slow and curious, I did not flinch. I watched it go. I could taste metal at the back of my tongue, adrenaline's aftertaste, but it faded under something cleaner: resolve. By late morning, the sky had thinned to a pale pewter, and the wind had that paper-dry feel that cracks skin. Connie drove me to the post office, the lobby smelling like cardboard and winter scarves. I sent Nolan's letters by certified mail, the green slips slick under my thumb, while the clerk stamped each envelope with a decisive thunk that sounded like a door closing somewhere good. On the sidewalk, I breathed out steam and watched it disappear. A strange, small relief. At the county recorder's office, fluorescent lights buzzed low like distant bees. I slid the homestead declaration and notice across the counter to a woman with copper nails and a soft voice that did not waste time. She checked my identification, tapped a few keys, and fed the papers into a machine that pressed an official sheen onto the page. The stamp landed, hard, square, undeniable. When she handed the copies back, they were warm. "Now anyone searching title will see you," she said, almost kindly. The words steadied my knees. To be seen where it counts. Back home, the house greeted me with its quiet, stubborn ordinary. I set the stamped copies on the kitchen table and emailed scanned PDFs to Nolan, then forwarded his no-showing letter to a short list of brokerages. Red receipts started pinging back, staccato and satisfying. One agent replied with a crisp acknowledgement. Another tried to push. A friendly walkthrough for an investor cousin. I typed my answer without looking at Connie. The owner does not authorize showings. All inquiries to counsel. Send. The smallest thrill. I set my phone face down and let the kettle sing. The doorbell chimed at early afternoon, bright as a dare. Connie's eyes met mine, and then flicked to the doorbell camera feed on my phone. Evan stood on the porch in a pea coat he wears when he wants to look reasonable. Beside him, Aubrey wrapped in a scarf the color of cranberry sauce, expression already arranged. She held a glossy gift bag, tissue paper sticking out like a flag. I opened the inner door and kept the lock engaged on the storm door, the aluminum frame cold under my fingers. The porch smelled like damp leaves and cologne. Evan's smile did not reach his eyes. "We should talk," he said. His voice was the old Evan, layered over something harder. "We are talking," I said, and I could hear the steadiness in it like a rail under my feet. "All communication goes to counsel. You received the letter." Aubrey laughed without humor. "Mom, this is dramatic. Neighbors are watching." Behind them, Mr. Delaney stepped onto his porch with a newspaper tucked under his arm, not reading it, just being there. Curtains shifted across the street, public, whether they liked it or not. Aubrey leaned toward the glass and dropped her voice as if intimacy could erase insult. "We only wanted to help. You get confused. The market is strong. This is what responsible families do." The word confused scraped my throat raw. I felt the old reflex to explain rising like a rash, and I pressed my palm flat against the cool metal to ground myself. I am not confused, I said. I am represented. Any attempt to access or list this property without my consent will be treated as interference. You may put that in writing to my attorney. The sentence felt like a bridge I had been building all morning and finally walked across. Evan's mouth tightened. If you insist on making this adversarial, he began, and that word adversarial rolled off his tongue too easily. Aubrey's eyes slid to the doorbell camera, and then to Mr. Delaney, who had lifted his mug in a small neighborly salute that said everything. I slipped an envelope through the mail slot, copies of Nolan's letter and the homestead filing, paper, not performance. You have what you need, I said. Please leave. For a moment, I thought Evan would press the buzzer and push, the way he did as a teenager testing curfews. He did not. He gathered the gift bag as if props could save the scene. They walked down the steps with the careful speed of people aware they are on a stage. Inside, I exhaled and realized my hands had gone numb. Connie warmed them between her palms like small birds. You did not shake, she said softly. I smiled, thin and real, only on the inside. I sent a brief log to Nolan, time, names, summary, and attached a clip from the doorbell camera. Evidence, not gossip. Then I opened the library website and reserved a small glass-walled meeting room for Friday at 3 o'clock. Neutral ground under fluorescent lights, where words look different because they echo. I sent a single-line email to my children. A meeting will be held then, with council present. Please confirm attendance. The confirmation email from the library landed just after sunrise, a plain line that steadied me. Room B, Friday at 3 o'clock. 10 chairs, glass walls, fluorescent honesty. Nolan replied that his colleague Ava Price would attend. Her message was spare and precise. Bring your log. Bring copies. Breathe. I printed my agenda on crisp paper and felt the familiar comfort of straight margins and bullet points that did not waver. Connie slid toast across the table and said, You'll speak once. Calm. Let the paper do the work. My phone buzzed with a banking alert, an attempted login from a device I did not recognize. A sour taste rose in my throat. I called the branch, and the hold music felt like being put in a drawer. Connie grabbed her keys. We go in person, she said. At the bank, the air smelled like Lehman cleaner, and the pen on the chain was cold as a coin. The manager, Claire Whitfield, listened with a tight, kind face. She set a branch-only note on my profile. No information released to anyone. No exceptions. We added a verbal password and printed a new set of recovery codes. When the printer spat out the confirmation, the paper was warm in my hands. If anyone calls claiming to be you, Claire said, we will ask for the word and hang up if it's wrong. The word I chose was not sentimental. It was steel. Back home, I was pouring tea when the doorbell rang and the screen lit with 2 officers on the porch, winter light sparking off badges. My stomach dropped and then steadied. A welfare check, one said, voice neutral, eyes scanning the entryway as radios hissed softly. A family member reported confusion. The word confusion tried to crawl up my spine. I opened the storm door a hand's width, enough to speak, not enough to invite. I gave them my ID, then Nolan's letter and the homestead filing. I kept my tone measured and let the papers speak for me. Mr. Delaney stepped onto his porch without a coat, pretending to fetch a package, and not pretending at all. One officer looked at the neat columns of my log, at the dates and times, and doorbell clip cue I offered. Ma'am, he said, not unkindly, you appear oriented and safe. He left a small card and a larger apology in his eyes. When they walked back to their car, the air seemed to relax a notch. Public again, but in daylight, with facts. I shut the door, and my hands went light, then heavy, the way they do after a near miss on the highway. Connie set a glass of water in front of me and stood close enough for her shoulder to touch mine. "They're escalating," she said. I nodded. For one small, shameful beat, I wanted to call Evan and ask how we had come to this, for him to tell me it was a misunderstanding, and for us to rewind back to the version of us that fixed leaky sinks and laughed at the news. That ache rose and fell. Then the steadier part of me took the keys from the dish and set them on the table between us. "Friday," I said. "We hold the line on Friday." I emailed Nolan about the welfare check and attached the officer's card details and the timestamp. He replied within minutes. "This is exactly why we meet in public. Do not engage. I'll brief Ava." The kettle clicked off, the house breathing its ordinary rhythm. I added one more line to my agenda. If anyone says confused, ask them to define it. Then show the bank safeguards, the filings, the log. Definitions matter. Paper matters. I matter. Thursday tasted metallic from the minute I woke, like a coin under my tongue. I reheated yesterday's coffee and let the bitter edge steady me. Ava called at 9, her voice cool as glass. "Two things," she said. "One, I'll be there early to set the frame. 2, anticipate escalation." As if on cue, an email pinged from a law office I did not know, a courteous threat in letterhead. A concerned family member exploring emergency guardianship and requesting access for a wellness inventory. The words were soft. The teeth were not. My hands went cold and then calm. I forwarded it to Ava. She replied in under a minute. Stall politely. "We'll meet them tomorrow in public." Meanwhile, we get a capacity letter on our terms. By noon, I was in Dr. Patel's exam room, paper crinkling under me, antiseptic sharp in the air. The cognitive screen was no drama. Months, serial sevens, recall, clock drawing. My pencil hovered, then moved with the old muscle memory of ledgers and due dates. When I finished, Dr. Patel smiled like a person who respects competence. "You are oriented, organized, and appropriately cautious," she said, dictating into a small recorder. "I'll have a letter this afternoon." The printer hummed, and when the page slid out, warm, into my hands, letterhead, date, signature, it felt like armor you can fold. At the grocery store, I ran into Joyce from church near the apples, her voice dropping to that careful tone people use when they're repeating a rumor they hope is not true. "I heard you weren't doing well," she said, eyes searching my face. I made myself breathe and answer once, plain and steady. "I am well. Some lines are being redrawn." She squeezed my wrist and nodded, a small public vote in the produce aisle. A clerk glanced over. Mr. Delaney's niece, bagging at the next lane, lifted her chin and half smiled. People see more than they say. Back home, the doorbell chimed. A courier. Not roses. Service. A glossy packet from that unknown law firm with tabs and polite dread. I photographed the envelope, the label, the contents, then slid the whole thing into a plastic sleeve and sent Ava a note. Received. Unresponsive until tomorrow. Connie read over my shoulder, lips pressed thin. "They want a private audience," she murmured. "They'll get glass walls." Dusk pulled the light thin. I walked the rooms, touching surfaces I have dusted for decades. The banister my husband sanded smooth, the window latch that sticks in spring, the picture frames that hold children in Christmas pajamas before mortgages and markets taught them sharper words. My chest ached with something old and honest. I stood in the doorway of my bedroom, the one they locked, and placed the capacity letter in the folder beside the locksmith receipt and the homestead stamp. Paper steadied my pulse. So did the kettle's soft click. So did Connie's laugh from the kitchen when her cat knocked a spoon to the floor. Ordinary life, insisting on itself. When night settled, I called Claire at the bank to add one more alert, then set my phone face down and rehearsed what I would say tomorrow. One sentence, clean and spare, followed by silence. Let the paper do the work. Let Ava catch the thrown knives. I am not confused. I am not for sale. I slept lightly, like a guard on the late shift, and when I woke before dawn, the house was quiet and mine. Friday's cold bit straight through my coat sleeves as Connie and I crossed the parking lot. The library doors breathed warm air and the smell of copy toner. Room B sat like a fishbowl. Glass walls, 10 plastic chairs, a whiteboard squeaking under a faded marker line. Ava was already there, neat stack of folders, eyes that missed nothing. "Ground rules," she said softly. "You state one boundary. Then let me speak." I nodded. My palms were dry, but my throat felt like chalk. Evan and Aubrey arrived on the dot of 3 o'clock with an older man in a navy blazer. Their attorney, last name Camden, handshake like a verdict. They took the side of the table that faced the hallway, which meant passersby would see their faces. Fine. Ava clicked a little recorder on. "For clarity," she said, voice even, "this is a non-confidential meeting. Public setting. We will be brief." I felt my heart pick up, not racing, just stepping forward. "This is my home," I said. One sentence I had memorized like a prayer. "There will be no access, no listing, no decisions about my life without my consent." Then I folded my hands and let the silence do its work. It did. Aubrey's smile thinned. Evan cleared his throat as if to reset the room. Camden slid a folder forward, the word guardianship tucked inside polite phrasing about safety, confusion, and temporary relief. Ava did not touch it. She laid Dr. Patel's capacity letter on top, stamped and warm, then the homestead filing, then the locksmith receipt, then the bank safeguards with Claire's signature. The stack made a small, satisfying weight against the laminate. "Any petition will be answered," Ava said, tone cool as tile. "If interference continues, welfare checks, attempted access, third-party showings, we will seek a protective order and fees. All communication remains through counsel." She did not raise her voice. She did not need to. Out in the hall, a teenager paused with a backpack and stared in, the way people glance at a small stage without meaning to. A librarian rolled a cart by and slowed, eyes flicking from paper to faces. Public. Consequences built themselves. Aubrey leaned in, stage whisper that bled through glass. "We are only trying to help. She gets overwhelmed. She forgets things. The market is strong now." The word forgets dragged like sandpaper across a tooth. I felt the old urge to explain, to produce proof of every bill I have paid on time for decades. Ava simply tapped the capacity letter with one nail. "This is the only market we care about," she said. "Capacity, ownership, consent." Evan's face flushed a dark, wounded red I recognized from toddler years and teenage curfews. "Mom," he said, and the word cracked and reformed. "This is humiliating." The "this" hovered, wide as the glass wall. I breathed once, let the breath warm the back of my teeth. "It didn't have to be," I answered, quiet, steady. The librarian shifted her cart. Mr. Delaney, posted casually at a table outside with a newspaper, looked up and met Evan's eyes with the patience of a man who has seen fires started and put out. Camden tried to gather the scene with a lawyer's tidy bow. "Perhaps a limited inventory of the home," he suggested, "to ensure safety and maintenance." Ava slid a prepared letter across instead, a cease and desist template with blanks filled. "No entry," she said. "Any attempt will be treated as trespass. You'll receive copies by email." Silence bloomed, bright and hard. Somewhere, a child laughed by the computers. The fluorescent lights hummed like holding a seashell to your ear. I could feel my pulse in my fingertips, not frantic now, just awake. I stood because the meeting was over. "Thank you for coming," I said, "because manners cost me nothing. Council will handle anything else." Evan stared at the documents as if they were a trick mirror. Aubrey's scarf rustled. Camden gathered his papers with measured dignity. When they left, they did it under the eyes of strangers, which has a way of changing memory. Outside, wind cut clean along the brick. Connie linked her arm through mine. Ava exhaled for the first time. "Next step," she said, already moving. "We lock your plans in ink. Living trust. Updated will. Strong no contest clause. We do it tomorrow." I nodded, light and tired, like a bell that had finally stopped ringing. My voice came out low. "Let's make it too late to rewrite me." Saturday smelled like cold paper and lemon oil in Ava's conference room. A notary slid her stamp across the table, heavy as a pocket watch. I signed the living trust that bears my name, then the updated will that narrows everything to one truth. My consent is the hinge. Connie sat beside me, steady as a metronome, while Ava read each clause aloud. Trust takes title to the house, successor trustee named, distributions guarded by a no contest clause that snaps shut if anyone pushes. The stamp landed, and the room seemed to exhale. We e-recorded the deed with the county. A confirmation flickered in Ava's inbox like a lighthouse blink. Done. At the bank, Claire greeted me with that brisk kindness of someone who has stood between people and storms. We retitled the main account in the trust's name, added payable on death instructions, and printed confirmations that came off the machine warm and smelling faintly of ink. Claire looked me in the eye and said, "If anyone asks about you, we ask for the word." I spoke it once, the small steel one, and felt it seat into place. Cease and desist letters went out next, certified, tracked, cold as marble. Ava copied their new attorney and the firm that had floated guardianship. Attached were Dr. Patel's letter and the library recording instructions. "They can withdraw quietly," Ava said, "or loudly. Either way, we keep walking." My spine seemed to notice itself and stand a little taller. By mid-afternoon, the doorbell chimed, and the screen filled with Evan and a handyman carrying a tool bag, Aubrey hovering like a red flag behind them. My chest went hollow and then solid. I answered through the intercom, all access through council. The handyman shifted, already regretting the job. Evan tried the old code and the alarm woke like a dog with opinions. I called the non-emergency line with the even tone of a woman reporting a leak. Mr. Delaney came out with a broom he did not need. When the cruiser rolled up, the officer listened to both sides and then to the paper. He wrote out a trespass notice, made them sign, handed me the yellow copy that crinkled in my fingers. Aubrey hissed, humiliating, like the word could be an eraser. It wasn't. After they left, the house smelled like cold air and adrenaline. Connie brewed tea. The mug warmed my palms back into my body. Ava's email pinged, deed recorded, account changes confirmed, letters delivered. In reply to her message, a single line from Camden, suddenly brief, acknowledged. We will advise our clients. I pictured the envelope I left on my vanity on Christmas morning, the one that said in neat bookkeeper hand that the old era was over. They had laughed then. Today they met the after, too late to rewrite me. Sunday light poured through the diner's big front windows and lacquered the tabletops the color of warm honey. The place smelled like coffee and flat-top butter, ordinary and clean, the way truth should smell. Connie sat to my left, steady as always. Ava sat to my right with a manila folder that held the last of the ink. Joyce from church waved from the counter, then turned back to her slice of pie, which was exactly the amount of attention I wanted. When Evan and Aubrey walked in, coats zipped, eyes careful, the bell above the door gave a bright little ring that felt like a curtain going up. I let them sit. The vinyl squeaked. Before anyone could perform, Ava placed 2 letters on the table, cream paper neat as a courtroom. "Withdrawal," she said, and tapped the firm's letterhead where it admitted they would not pursue guardianship. I watched Aubrey's mouth press into itself, and Evan's shoulders drop the way they used to when a teacher handed back a test he hadn't studied for. Then I took out my own letter, the one I had rewritten 3 times, until each line lay flat and could hold weight. I read it once, not loud, but clear enough for the nearest booths to hear if they wanted to. The trust holds the house. Connie is my successor trustee and medical proxy. A modest bequest is set aside for Evan, contingent upon 1 quiet year without harassment, interference, or third-party pressure, and a written apology that admits the lock, the welfare check, and the porch scene were wrong. Any challenge triggers the no contest clause and sends that bequest to a literacy fund in my husband's name. All contact remains through counsel. No keys will be issued. No inventories will occur. The word confused belongs to no one here. The radiator hissed once, long as a breath. Aubrey stared at the sugar caddy as if it might offer a rebuttal. Evan reached for the paper, then stopped when Ava kept a fingertip on the corner. "You'll receive your copy by email," she said, almost gentle. Something in Evan's face, some old, boyish, decent thing, flickered and tried to surface, then thought better of it, and sank. "This is humiliating," he whispered. Not to me, not really, but to the story he had been telling himself. I felt the coffee cup warm my palm and thought how humiliation is just pride-meeting daylight. I stood because the scene was done, and I choose my exits now. I tucked my copy back into the folder, felt the smooth edge of the paper, the soft rasp of it sliding home. "I wish you well," I said, no ornament, no sugar. "For a year, we all stay quiet. If you want to come back from this, do it in writing." Outside, the air was bright and thin. The keys in my pocket knocked together, a small, friendly sound. Connie looped her arm through mine. Ava exhaled, the long, tired breath of a job finished clean. When I reached my front porch, the new deadbolt turned smooth under my hand, and the house breathed out to meet me. Heater ticking, cedar faint in the closet, the kettle finding its soft first boil. I set my letter in the safe, closed the steel door, and felt the quiet settle. They had locked me in so I would rest. I do now, on my terms.